Today's class is called Mobilize Your Wrist. We're going to be working on strengthening and mobilizing the wrist, but also working the core and really working on the importance of the core connection when weight bearing. So today we're going to really work on how we can dial up our core engagement anytime we're weight bearing, or any times to just see if we can take some of the effort out of the wrist and the hands and lift it into the core. So we're really going to be working on the core and the wrist today, starting in bridge pose. So come onto your back, lie on your back, checking your triple S, making sure the back of your skull is on the mat, your shoulder blades or scapula, and your sacrum right above the tailbone, so that low back area. We're going to start with the hands down, really press into your hands, feel the arms start to light up. Use your glutes as you lift into a low bridge. We're going to find our neutral pelvis here. Find your two pelvic points and just try to draw them in toward each other. So they're not actually moving, but what muscles would you feel you need to engage in order to draw those two pelvic points together? Really think about wrapping your glutes down toward the heels. Start to use the core a little bit here, working on holding this neutral pelvis. Reach your right palm up. Take the left hand, pull back across that right hand, stretching that right wrist. But as you're stretching this right wrist, keep your focus on the glutes, that neutral pelvis. Left palm up, pull back across the left fingers with the right hand. Keep wrapping those glutes down towards your heels. Release your arms back to your sides. Use your core to slowly support you lowering the upper back, middle back, really slowly lower back. Once the sacrum comes down, you'll press into the feet again, lift up for that low, low bridge, feeling the glutes kick on. Imagine again those two pelvic points drawing in toward each other. Now think about your pubic bone, the front of your pelvis, lifting up toward your belly and really squeeze the glutes. We're going to make a fist with the arms, reach them up, keep holding strong in the glutes, and we'll circle the wrists. Both directions, beginning to move a little bit more. Lower your arms back to your sides. Keep the glutes on. Keep that activation in the core so you can slowly lower your upper back, middle back. Slowly lower the sacrum. Interlace your hands behind your head. Draw your elbows in towards your face. Check that the sacrum is down. It hasn't popped up, so we don't want to tip the pelvis here. We're really trying to get into those deep, deep proximal muscles. So to do that, we can't have the pelvis tipped forward. We really need to ground that sacrum down. Inhale here. Exhale, hold that sacrum down. Lift up off your shoulder blades. Tuck your chin towards your throat. Now really lean your head back into your hands without lowering the shoulder blades back down. Again, look at those two pelvic points. Draw them in toward each other. Feel the belly button start to draw down toward the sacrum, toward the mat. Inhale to lower. Exhale, lift up. Chin towards your throat. Really pull that belly button down. Now think about those front ribs knitting in as if you were tightening a corset. Inhale to lower. Exhale, lift up. Chin towards your throat. Draw those pelvic points in. Make sure the sacrum is down on the mat. Belly button draws down. Inhale to lower. Exhale, lift up. Chin towards your throat. Pelvic points draw in. Front ribs knit in. Belly button draws down. Inhale to lower. Exhale, lift up. Knit those front ribs in. Draw those pelvic points in. Really press the sacrum down. Inhale to lower. Take a big breath in. Stretch the arms either up toward the ceiling or toward the back of the mat as much as possible without flaring the ribs. So keep that feeling of corseting those front ribs as you reach the arms up. Exhale through your mouth. Coming into a seated position. Sit in any position that feels comfortable. We'll quickly check in with the bowl of our pelvis. Front of the pelvis is the pubic bone. Sides are the ilium. Back is the sacrum. So we really want to hold this whole bowl upright and try not to let it spill forward. So it'll be easier to hold that core engagement if we have that neutral pelvis. We're going to bring the arms forward. So we'll extend the wrist, palms are forward. Spread your fingers as wide as you can. Look down at your hands. And we'll lower one finger at a time, starting with the pinkies. Ring finger, middle finger, index finger, thumbs cross over, knuckles pull back as far as possible toward the forearms. Really feel a stretch in the wrist. Big breath in. Let it out through your mouth. Circle your fists in both directions. And then pause in this fist position. Spread the fingers, really opening the hands, and then back to that fist. You're going to keep going as fast as you can. So start to pick up the pace. I call these fists of fire. So you'll start to feel it in the fingers, the wrist, all the way up into the forearms. Good. Pause. Bring the wrists into extension. Spread your fingers. Look at your hands. Lower one finger down at a time. Good. Noticing what hand might work a little bit quicker. Thumbs cross over. Knuckles pull down and back toward the forearms. Big breath in. Out through your mouth. Circle both directions. Good. Again, come back to that fist. Fist of fire. Go as fast as you can. Opening and closing the hands. Try not to pick up the pace of the breath. So keep that deep breath. Working the arms. Good. Pause. Shake it out. However you want. Nothing specific. And we'll come on to quadruped. So this is where we're going to really focus on engaging the core, getting this lifted feeling out of the wrist. So we're going to bring the shoulders right over the wrist creases. Lift your throat. Find that neutral pelvis. So by really focusing on our posture, we can make sure we're aligned as optimally as possible to not have so much dumping into the wrist. So the more we can engage and really focus on everything working together, the more we'll feel stable here, that we're not just really putting all of our weight into that wrist joint. So we'll lift the throat. Imagine that you had a broom behind your back. Would it touch the back of your skull, your shoulder blades, and your sacrum? Find that same feeling of drawing those pelvic points in. And we'll talk about our shoulder blades here. So we want to make sure we're not rounding in the upper back, puffing up here. So we'll do a few protractions. So that's that action of pressing into the hands, a little bit like what I just did, having the shoulder blades protract or move away from the spine. And then we'll come back through that neutral position and try to retract, squeezing the shoulder blades in toward each other. Protract, so kind of puffing up between the shoulder blades, reaching them away from the spine. And then retract, squeeze them in. Protract, shoulder blades move away. Retract, really squeeze those shoulder blades in toward each other. Try to find a happy medium, somewhere in the middle. So we don't want to be protracting when we're weight bearing. We don't want to be retracting. So we really want to squeeze and find a medium where our shoulder blades are on the back of our ribs. If you're already noticing the hands getting a little bit tired, see if you can engage that core a little bit more. See if you can find a little bit of lift out of the wrist. Good, let's take a child's pose. Either reach the arms forward if that feels good, or roll the wrists in any way. It can be with a fist, hands can be out, whatever feels good to just release a little bit of that. When we're really focusing on our posture, sometimes simple things can seem a little bit harder. So that quadruped might have felt a little bit more challenging. And we'll come back to that quadruped. Back to hands and knees. Try to find that same optimal position, lifting your throat, feeling that happy medium for your shoulder blades. Pelvis is neutral. Engage your core to see if you can find a little bit more help here. Feel like you're taking a little bit of weight and lifting it out of the wrist. Now we're going to press into the fingers. And try to lift just the heels of the hands up. And then slowly lower down. Press into the fingers, lift just the heels of the hands up. Lower down with control. So again, see if you can amp up or dial up your core here, have a little bit more engagement here, so that maybe it's a little bit easier to lift and lower with control. Nice and slowly, keep the throat lifting. So if you're letting the head drop down here, that's really gonna affect what happens with the shoulders and the shoulder blades. So again, really think about your posture and your alignment. Make this movement a little bit easier. Again, let's take a child's pose. Maybe roll out the wrist. Any type of movement or stretching here. Come back to quadruped. This time we'll stretch it out with cat-cow. So we'll let the pelvis tip forward and back as we round the back, arch the back, or flex the spine, extend the spine. Coming into a downward dog, lift the throat again. Tuck your toes under, lift the pelvis straight up. Continue to lift your hip creases up, letting the feet walk forward so that we can really keep the weight in the hands. Lifting again, see if you can give yourself a little bit of assistance here by lifting the pelvis, trying to lift everything up into the pelvis. So we want to find that core engagement here, that neutral pelvis. Drawing those pelvic points in, and then lifting up your front ribs. That's also going to help us not have this feeling of sinking down toward the mat, but instead lifting everything up in your downward dog. Keep that lifting feeling up into the pelvis as we start to walk the hands back toward the feet, coming into a happy squat. Sit back into your glutes. Hip creases move back. Think about that broom behind your back again, back of the skull, shoulder blades, and sacrum. If you had a broom, would it touch all three? Use your glutes as you press into the feet, rise to stand, reach the arms up, reach the shoulder blades up, give yourself that lift here. Exhale, release your arms down. Walking to the top of your mat, we'll come into our mountain pose, checking that neutral posture. Check that your pelvic bowl isn't tipping forward or back. So again, just like the shoulder blades, find that happy medium of not tipping forward, not tipping backwards, where we can feel like those pelvic points are drawing in toward each other. And maybe by trying to draw those pelvic points in here, you've already felt the glutes start to engage or start wrapping down toward the heels to find that neutral position or that upright pelvic bowl. Press into your feet. We'll inhale the arms forward and up. Anytime your arms reach up overhead, lift your shoulder blades. Get that upward lift everywhere. Rib cage. Use the core to lift and reach the arms up. Exhale, hinge at the hips. Really think about moving your hip creases back. Keep that broom behind your back as you plant the hands down. We'll step to a plank pose, loading the wrist. So again, just like in quadruped, think about everything working together. Glutes, really find that engagement in the core. Find that happy medium of your shoulder blades. Lift your throat so that we can lift everything we can out of the wrists. Lower your knees. You can untuck the toes if that feels good. Lift again. Squeeze your glutes. Lower the rest of the way without letting your shoulders roll forward. So keep the head of your arm bones lifted. We're gonna lift the belly. So again, we're gonna use the core. Find a lifting feeling in the core. Use the glutes. Draw the shoulder blades together. So it's almost like our palms are trying to slide toward the back of the mat. Keep lifting the belly. Good, lift to quadruped. Back to hands and knees. Find that neutral position. Lift your throat. Step your right foot through your hands. Left knee will stay down for low lunge. Lift up. Now really check alignment here. Draw those pelvic points in. Think about lifting your pubic bone, the front of your pelvis, up toward your belly. Use that left glute. Try to wrap it down toward the heel. We're going to bring that left palm forward. Elbow will come in toward the ribs. Wrist stretch. Right finger just pull across the left hand. Stretching that left wrist and forearm, left hip, hip flexor. Think about that broom behind your back here. Can you use the core to give yourself a little bit more of a lifting feeling here? Lifting up out of that left knee. Plant the hands down. Right knee will step back to quadruped. Now again, think about lifting everything here, lifting the throat, drawing those pelvic points in. We'll start to dial the hands out to whatever degree you can. They might be diagonal. They might be out to the side. Dial them back as far as you comfortably can. We don't want anything to hurt. We just want it to feel like your level of stretch, whatever that is. Maybe take some gentle rocks forward and back here. You can have a softness in the elbows. But again, lift your throat. Think about holding everything in its place, posture-wise. And then we'll start to add a little bit of cat-cow movement here. Again, to whatever degree feels okay in the wrists, the forearms, the shoulders. Good. Bring the hands back to that forward-facing position. Left foot steps through. Right knee stays down. Lift up, find that low lunge. Think about everything in that neutral posture. Pelvic bowl is upright, not tipping forward or back. Shoulders stack over the pelvis. Think about that broom touching the back of your skull, shoulder blades and sacrum. Really firm that right glute. Right palm comes forward, elbow comes in toward the ribs. Pull back across the right fingers with that left hand. And again, engage what you can here. Firm that right glute. Good. Maybe engage the core a little bit. Give yourself that upward lift feeling here. Lower the hands. Left foot steps back to quadruped. We're going to do that same thing, dialing out the hands to whatever degree of rotation feels good. But again, we want to hold that quadruped position in the rest of the body. Lifting the throat, keeping that upward lift here. Pelvis is neutral if you're rocking. Or again, maybe make some circular movements this time. Or cat-cow, whatever feels good for the wrists and forearms. Good. Bring the hands back to that forward-facing position. You can take child's pose if you'd like to get off the hands for a little bit, maybe do some rolls with the wrists. Or if you'd like, you can come to downward dog. If you're in downward dog again, think about that same upward lift. Can you feel like you're lifting everything out of the wrist, lifting those hip creases, lifting the front ribs? As if you can make yourself lighter by lifting everything up so that we're not putting everything into the wrist here, holding us in this weight-bearing position. Wherever you are, we're going to bend the knees, walk the feet back into our forward fold. Really hinge at your hips here. Lift your throat. Use your glutes as you rise to stand. Exhale, hinge at your hips. Plant the hands for plank. As you step back, already be thinking glutes and core. Lift the throat. Think about that broom behind your back. Imagine lifting your pubic bone to the belly button here. Lower your knees. You can untuck the toes if that feels good. Recheck that triple S. Make sure the head hasn't dropped down or the pelvis hasn't dropped forward. Hold that posture as you exhale. Lower with control. Again, use your core. As you lower, chin towards your throat, use your glutes and your core so that we can draw the chest through the hands, keeping that upward lift in the body. Think about lifting your belly button away from the mat. Good, lift back to quadruped. Right foot steps in between your hands. You can tuck the toes if that feels good. Lift up and again, check that Upright pelvis, zipper your pubic bone up, squeeze that left glute. Can you give yourself that lift here? Imagine that you could lift up off this left knee without actually lifting up. So really just engage everything you can to get this lift. And we'll reach the arms forward and circle. You can do it with fists if that feels good. You can let the hands go and just circle. Both directions, keep everything working. Left glute on, drawing those pelvic points in as we give the wrist a little bit of movement. Lower the hands down. Right foot steps back for quadruped. Now let's really focus on this position here. Find everything in this neutral posture. Shoulder blades are protracting or retracting, somewhere where our shoulder blades feel like they're on the back of our ribs. Lifting your throat, drawing those pelvic points in. Now if this feels like a lot, you can definitely stay here. If you want to practice loading one wrist, you can reach the right arm forward, but right away, notice if we've lost any of that alignment. So try to find that neutral position, engage the core, find that neutral pelvis. Maybe right arm reaches forward. Try to hold everything just as strong. So we're really working on that left wrist, holding that left side of the body really strong. Lower that right hand. Reset that neutral position, lift your throat, draw those pelvic points in, find that neutral shoulder blade. Really work that right side, maybe lift that left arm forward. Try to hold everything just as it was. So it might be tiny lifts and lowers, wherever you are today. Lower that left hand. Good. Other side, left foot steps through. Maybe tuck the right toes, lift up, find that alignment. Think about that broom behind your back. Squeeze and firm this right glute. Reach the arms forward. Circle in whatever way feels good for the wrist. Maybe it's fist. Whatever it looks like, but hold everything still. So think about what needs to work for that pelvis to stay upright. Lower the hands. Again, step back to that quadruped and really think about your alignment here. Lift your throat. We want to make sure the head's not dropping down. Find that happy medium between protracting and retracting for your scapula. Check the back of the pelvis. Make sure it's not tipping forward or back. Stay here. If this is a lot to work on today, if this is where you want to be, stay here. But really use your core. We're going to reach that left arm forward. Try to hold everything in that right side still. Can you use your core a little bit more to lift up out of that right wrist? Lower that left hand down. Realign, check where you are. Hold everything in the position that feels the most neutral to you. Hold that core strong. Maybe the right arm reaches forward. Notice what wants to move first. Is it your left shoulder blade? Is it the head dropping down? Is it the pelvis? Lower down. Good. Let's take a child's pose. Any kind. You can stay still. You can stretch the wrists. You can roll them. If you want to head to down dog for the last breath, you can, or stay here in child's pose. If you're in down dog again, think about lifting everything up toward the pelvis, away from the wrists. Then we'll bend the knees, walk forward toward the top of the mat. Sitting back into the glutes. Think about that broom behind your back here. Press into your feet, rise the arms forward and up. Lift the shoulder blades, release the hands. From the top of your mat, step the ball of your right foot back and bend your right knee for a high lunge or crescent lunge. Again, think about that broom behind your back. Find that neutral pelvis. Make sure it's not tipping forward or back. Feel like you're trying to lift your pubic bone up towards your belly button. And that might start to firm that right glute a little bit more. Firm it anyway, even if it didn't kick in. We're gonna reach the arms up. Reach your shoulder blades up. Take your left hand and grab your right wrist. We're going to try to grab that right wrist with the left hand. Lift that whole right side of the body up. So lift that right shoulder blade up even more, right side of the ribs. Pull on that right wrist, but make sure nothing's changed in the pelvis. So again, we have this upward lift happening. Everything's lifting up. Side bending a little bit toward the left if that feels good. But again, hold those ribs in place. Come back up. Release your arms. We're going to turn toward the side of the mat. So turn toward that right side of your mat. Get ready to squat. So only externally rotate the hips to whatever degree feels good. We don't want to force that turn out. Find your neutral pelvis. Make sure it's not tipping forward or back. And bend your knees. Only bend to the degree that feels good. Think about that posture. Pelvis is as neutral as it can be. Shoulders are over the pelvis, not dropping the head forward. Arms will reach out to the side. Wrists will start in this extended position with the palms forward. And then we'll flex at the wrist. So try to pull your fingers back toward the forearms. Extend the wrist. Flex the wrist. Now keep doing this. And as you're working the wrists and the arms, if you notice the legs start to get tired or the glutes get a little bit snoozy, think about everything working together. Can you dial up the core here to give yourself a little bit more help? Can you use the glutes a little bit more? Can you lift the throat back a little bit so the weight isn't dropping forward with the head? Relax your arms, straighten your legs, step it back to the top of your mat. Second side, hold that neutral pelvis as you step the left foot back, bend the knee. Think about the broom behind your back. What needs to work to hold the pelvis neutral, to keep the shoulders over the pelvis? Keep all of that strong as you reach the arms up, reach the shoulder blades up. This time our right hand is going to grab that left wrist. Find that same lift on everything in this left side. Lift up that left pelvic point, left ribs, left shoulder blade, that left wrist by reaching and pulling a little bit more. Holding that pelvic bowl upright. Release your arms, turn toward the side of the mat. Finding that squat position. Bend your knees. Check that pelvic bowl here. Draw those pelvic points in. Zipper the pubic bone up. Shoulders stay over the pelvis. Good. Really set up for this strength in the lower body, strength in the core as you reach the arms out. Wrists are extending, palms are forward. Flex at the wrist, pull the fingers back. Extend the wrist. Flex the wrist, keep going, any pace that feels good, but keep everything really strong. So if you notice one part starting to get tired, see what you can amp up or dial up to take a little bit of effort out of whatever place that is. Maybe it's the glutes, maybe it's the quads, maybe it's the wrist, the forearms. Relax your hands, straighten your legs, step it back to the top of the mat. Right foot will step back for warrior two. So the right foot steps toward the back of the mat, toes face the side of your mat. Left knee will bend. Check that pelvic bowl. Just like we don't want to force that rotation with the squat, we don't want to force the rotation of that left hip here. So our hips do not need to be facing the side of the mat. Have them as diagonal as you'd like, but make sure we're not tipping forward here. So really think about lifting your pubic bone up, squeezing your glutes. Arms will reach out for warrior two. We're going to hold the legs strong, so keep those glutes working. Make a fist and circle. Circling both directions. But really hold the arms strong, so that will also help. We're stretching and mobilizing the wrist, but we still need to use some active muscles here to hold the arms out nice and strong. Release your arms, straighten that left leg. Turn toward the side of your mat. Parallel the feet for side lunges. We'll bend into our right knee first. Hinging at the hips, so really move that right hip crease back. Hold that neutral pelvis. Use your core here. Lift the throat. Make sure we're not dropping the head down. We're going to reach the arms out to the side. Now we need to use the muscles around the shoulder blades here as well so that we don't round the upper back. We want to keep that long spine, feeling of the broom behind our back. And then as you side lunge to the left, we're going to switch and make a fist. But again, hold those arms out. Really flex at that left hip. Use your core. Side lunge to the right. Bring the palms forward. Reach those fingertips out. Think about that broom behind your back. Side lunge to the left. Make a fist again. Hold those shoulder blades on the back of the ribs. Release your arms. Rise to stand. Step it to the top of the mat. Left foot steps back. Warrior two. Wherever your hips are facing, hold that pelvic bowl upright so it's not tipping. Use your glutes to hold that pelvis still. Draw those pelvic points in. Arms will reach out to the side. Make a fist. Circle both directions. Hold those arms out so we're still thinking about our posture. Think about that broom behind your back. So if you let the head drop, you're going to let the shoulders roll too. So everything needs to work. Work together so that we can focus on mobilizing the wrists. Release your arms, straighten that right leg, turn toward the side of the mat. We're going to move a little bit faster with the hands as we do our side lunges here. So we'll side lunge to the left, really hinge at the hips. Think about moving the hips back, 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 pressing into the pinky toe of that right foot. Now we're going to reach the arms out, and as we hold here in this side lunge, fists of fire, open and close the fist. Try not to let the arms start to droop. So notice what your shoulder blades are doing. Try to find that neutral where they're not rounding or moving away. They're somewhere on the ribs. Think about using your glutes and your core to hold yourself in this position. And then switch, side lunge to the left. Set up for that neutral spine. If you had a broom behind your back, would it touch that triple S? Zipper that pubic bone up toward the belly. Fists of fire, open and close. Check in with the head. Make sure we're not dropping it. Check in with your shoulder blades. Check in with your core, your glutes. Good, release your arms, straighten your leg. Step it back to the top of the mat. For our balance today, we're going to continue to work our wrist while also working on hip flexion, balance, and core work. So we're going to have the feet about hips distance apart. Start with your arms up overhead and your wrists in extension. So that's that palms forward position. And then try to lift your shoulder blades up. Lift your whole rib cage up. So again, we want this feeling of everything lifting up. And we'll keep this lift as we flex the right hip. So pick up that right foot. Squeeze that left glute. Continue to reach, reach, reach everything up. Drawing those pelvic points in. Good, lower down. Lift everything up again. Shoulder blades, rib cage. Use your core. Flex that left hip. Squeeze that right glute. Keep that big upward lift. Good, release it down. Relax your arms for a moment. Shake it out. We're going to add on a little bit more to that. So the only thing we're going to change is an extra movement with the wrist. So it'll be a little bit of a puzzle for the brain as well. Start the same way. Wrists are in extension, so palms are forward, and we're reaching them up. Kind of like we're doing a handstand upside down. Reach those shoulder blades up. Think about that big upward lift. This time, as we flex the right hip, squeeze that left glute, we're going to flex the wrist. So really try to pull your fingertips down toward the forearm. But again, lift everything up as you do that. Bring that right foot back down. Re-extend the wrist, so palms are forward. Big upward lift. Use your core, use your glutes. Flex the left hip, squeeze your right glute. Flex the wrist now, so fingers are pulling back toward the forearms. Big lift up. Good, step it down. Bring the wrist back into extension, so that palms forward position one more time. Big lift up. Flex the right hip as you flex the wrist. Fingers are pulling back toward the forearm. Lift the shoulder blades. Good. Step it down. Wrists go back into that extended position. Lift the rib cage, lift the shoulder blades. Use your core. Flex the left hip. Good. Flex the wrist. Really lift everything up. Squeeze that right glute. Good. Lower it down. Roll it out and roll the shoulders back. We're going to come back into a seated position. We've done a lot on and for our wrists today, so we're going to do a little bit of a forearm and wrist massage. We'll start with this right hand, so just sit in any comfortable position, and we're going to start up by the elbow. Now you're just going to do it at your own judgment, your own preference. You can do really light with fingertips. If you find that you could do a little bit more pressure, you can use knuckles, you can use your thumb, but basically we're just going to start to massage from the forearm, making our way down to the wrist. So it's almost like we're squeezing a tube of toothpaste from the bottom up. So just do a little bit of massage or tissue release here, noticing it might feel tighter if this is an area you don't usually pay much attention to. Maybe you know that it's going to be a little bit tender there. So just work your way down to the wrist. Once you start getting closer to that wrist joint, right where our hand meets the arm bones, you're going to start to massage around the wrist joint and start to pull up on it. So it's kind of like we're grabbing at the wrist and pulling it away. So we're trying to create a little bit more space in that wrist joint. And just, again, your own preference here. Make whatever type of movements feel good to kind of get some of that out of the wrist. Maybe it's making some noises, that's all right. And then just shake it out, however it feels good, before we switch to the other side. So now we're gonna do that left forearm. Again, start up near that elbow crease and work your way down, slowly coming from the forearm, making your way down to the wrist. And again, fingertips if you want lighter pressure, knuckles if you want a more medium, thumb if you'd like to go at it a little bit harder. Again, just to whatever your preference is, whatever feels good today. Taking note of any differences between right and left forearms. Maybe one side is a little bit more sore than the other, or a little tighter. Once you start getting closer toward that actual wrist joint, do that same type of massage, that pulling. So again, we want that big upward lift here, creating more space between the arm bones and the hand, right in that wrist joint. So might make some noises, as long as it's not accompanied by pain. It's pretty normal for our bodies to make noise. And then shake that left hand out. Come onto your back. We'll stretch it out a little bit, checking that the sacrum is down, the shoulder blades, back of the skull. Cross your right ankle over that left thigh. Find that neutral pelvis. Make sure it's not tipping forward or back. Drawing those pelvic points in. You can stay here. You can goal post your arms, opening the front of the chest and shoulders. And if you'd like to stretch that left hip a little bit further, pick up that left foot. But again, make sure the shoulder blades don't pop up. Really keep the shoulder blades on the mat. Release it down. Switch sides, flex the left foot, cross it over that right thigh. Stay here, checking that triple S, or keep that triple S down. And maybe pick up the right foot. You can have the arms anywhere. But if you want to feel that stretch in the front of the chest, goal post the arms. Slow your breath down. Release it down. Take the next few breaths to make any extra movements you'd like before Shavasana. You can hug your knees in. You can take a happy baby. You You can move the hands and the wrists around. Whenever you're ready, come to your comfortable Shavasana, whatever that looks like. Closing your eyes. Slowing your breath down. Taking a scan of your body from head to toe. Notice what areas feel tired, energized, relaxed, warm. Stay here in your Shavasana as long as you'd like.